come more and more, which makes it really interesting. So whenever you're ready.
Should we do like an intro for the podcast, or is it just, since it's just snippets, should I just like ask you the question or talk about the subject and then you can answer?
Yeah, right? Because I mean, you could
Yeah.
just do like meme title and, like the big myth stuff. But this one is like, what's the big news? We can do like a title, which
Yeah.
misses the the intro, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Which one do you want to start with?
So I was gonna do the big news on climate litigation one first.
Okay.
Just and that has no, that has no, I don't know, context. It's just this big news like lawsuit.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't even have to ask you the questions. If we just like use a template with the question like written and then we show your answer, I don't even have to talk. So,
Right?
yeah.
We could try it. Maybe do ask the question and then we
Yeah.
pause and you can see whether or not you want to keep it in.
Okay, so it's the question about the big
So
lawsuit.
you're on the document with me, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, this is if you see where I am, news for
Don't.
recording two.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
No,
Okay.
notes for recording two, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, can you tell me a little bit about the big news on climate litigation?
Yeah, so this is
Okay.
kind of wacky sounding, right? So it's this smallhold farmer in Peru and near a town called, I've written it down, it's called Juarez or something. I can't speak Spanish, I'm terrible. Anyway, so in 2015, in November, he brings a lawsuit against Germany's largest electricity provider. And RWE is what they're called, right? And so he charges them with paying 0.47% of his costs in building flood resistant, flood protection facilities for his farm, right? And he's done this because, actually, stop, I'm not setting it up properly. I'm not setting it up properly. We're gonna do it again. Okay. So what's this big news? Yeah.
Yeah, so what's this big news on the climate litigation?
So this is really, really quite, it's almost kooky to hear about it because it's for such a small amount of money, but it's a huge precedent to set. So it's this smallholder farmer in Peru, and he's brought a lawsuit against Germany's largest electricity company, RWE, right? And so this was first introduced in 2015, and it was immediately dismissed, and then he was allowed to appeal, and now the appeal is going to be heard, right? And I think it's going to be heard next week. And so what's interesting about this, he's charging them with their responsibility in causing and contributing to climate change. And what's happened is there's been melting glaciers near his town, near his farm. And it's caused the formation of a glacier lake, which was never there before. And that's going to lead to flooding of his crops, right? So he has to invest in flood protection systems, which are fairly expensive. So his lawsuit is charging RWE, which is a massive, massive firm, right, with 0.47% of his investment costs. So I think the total number is like 15,000 euros or something. It's really small. However, what's significant is this 0.47 is RWE's global percentage in responsibility for climate change. So I think there's like 100 firms globally that are responsible for 99% of the emissions or something. Those are not the precise stats, but anyway, it's largely the large oil and gas and energy companies and the financial firms that fund them. So it is, like the top players like British Petroleum is like 2 or 3%, and Chevron is like 3% or something, and the list goes down. And then this RWE is 0.47%. So this lawsuit could set unbelievable precedents that, individuals or organizations can go after the, those responsible for those percentages. Anyway, it's crazy news. But this also, what drives me nuts when people criticize and shame others for their personal carbon footprint, when in fact, even if every human on the planet lived a personal net zero emissions lifestyle, which by the way is not actually possible, right? Then it would only amount to 30% of global emissions, right? It's not about the personal carbon footprint. It's the systems level, right? It's how we power things, how we make things, but it's at the systemic, like industrial level. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's quite wild news. And for that personal carbon footprint thing, that's another funny, one of the best kept open secrets, I don't know how you say it, but the personal carbon footprint was a PR campaign that flooded the world, much like no, tobacco's good for your health. That was a PR campaign, right? And doctors are smoking and it's wonderful. So and it was the same PR firm, right, who launched this huge global PR campaign. And I think it was one of the big oil and gas companies, I won't say, because we're not going to be the shamers, right?
Yeah.
But they were looking to protect their business interests. And so they wanted to deflect attention from their activities and put it elsewhere. And so they put it on the individual. And so everyone runs around talking about my personal carbon footprint. No, it's the carbon footprint of the major, and
Yeah.
suppliers.
They're
And
trying to shift the focus from them
exactly.
to the
And
people.
and didn't it work so well?
Yeah, it did.
Didn't it work so well? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We're all walking around with a certain amount of guilt because we're thinking like, oh my God, I'm ruining the earth.
no, well, I mean, we must all we must be cognizant, but I think the biggest thing that your generation can do is push our generation, right? Push your parents to do what they need to do in their companies, push your friends' parents, push our generation to make the changes in their companies. That's what I think you guys should be doing. And get into politics, get into voting, get into talking about it and learn where do all the emissions come from? The pie chart, we'll share that one of these days as an image, but learn where it comes from, learn where the big problems are, and how you can help debunk a lot of the myths. I think one of the major focus areas for everyone should be buildings and land, right? Because the airlines, they're definitely going to make all the moves necessary. They have tons of pressure. They're gonna switch. Same goes for transport, right? Everyone knows these problems. The big guys know what problems they need to take care of, but the challenges are buildings, and we all have buildings, right? And I think buildings represent something like 43% of global emissions.
And like the building of buildings or in like the consumption after if they're not.
Very good question. So split it in half, and the building of buildings is about 50% of the total, and that's the cement and the concrete and the steel, right? And the disruption of the land, right? Because they dig and they, fuck up all the land. And
Yeah.
then the other half is what they call operational emissions, and that's how we heat buildings and how we cool buildings. And the worst of the worst is the fact that we lose 25% of all energy because of insulation, because of inefficiencies. It's just drifting out through the windows because they're poorly insulated, or windows are open or doors are open or lights are on when people are not in the room. So you can reduce energy consumption by 30% in buildings just by insulating and putting smart heating and cooling systems so that you're not wasting energy when no one's in the room, or you're not heating when it's no need to heat, etc. And there's so many interesting, you can a green roof, if you just cover a roof in foliage or put a farm up there, you can introduce almost like 30% efficiencies because it cools the building. It insulates and it cools the building. It's really quite cool how, you know, these weird little solutions just introduce so many efficiencies. But yeah, the building of buildings is a big one because I think we're going to, between now and 2050, we're going to build as much in urban environments as we have built to date. Like we're going to double the surface area of concrete on the planet.
That's
And then they
crazy.
stay there for hundreds of years.
Yeah, plus when you think of all the buildings that are like abandoned, could we not just reuse that?
Exactly. That's actually my PhD thesis is about rejuvenating urban environments and repurposing buildings for exactly that. But you're absolutely right. And this is why, you know, what we talked about with the recycling story, it's about reuse. We have so much, you know, materials, resource, we have so much. We don't actually need more. We can reuse and reuse and reuse. Like you can make concrete bricks out of concrete waste. You know, you can even, I'm gonna have to look this up, but you can use concrete waste dust or cement waste dust, I still don't even know what the difference is, as fertilizers on land for agriculture, and it captures carbon, right? Like it's wild. You can make bricks out of recycled plastics, you know, like plastic, no, non-recyclable plastics, like the hard, big stuff. They can turn it into bricks. You can make concrete out of hemp, you know, like non-THC marijuana. Hemp is one of the most brilliant materials. You can make so much out of hemp. But you can make fabrics out of hemp, you can make concrete bricks out of hemp. You can even, oh, this is biochar, I think, or hemp. Biochar is, they used to call it the black gold, and it was like an indigenous thing that they would produce. And it's like coal, I know, like burnt wood, but without the CO2. So it's like zero carbon burnt wood. That was a really poor way of describing it. Anyway, it just looks like black soil, right?
Yeah.
And you can use this. I think I wrote a white paper once. There's like 50 uses of biochar, this burnt wood stuff. But for agriculture, I think you lay it like just under the surface of the land at like 70, I don't know, 10 cent or something. And you use 70% less water because it holds the water. And you don't have to use pesticides or fertilizers. It's brilliant, right? And you can also like lay roads. You can make roads with biochar. Like there's just 50 uses. I'm sure there's even more. Anyway, so I've been babbling on and on and on. Any anything that needs clarification there?
No, I think it was really clear.
Okay.
So can move on to another question? Yeah.
Yeah. That was not one of the rapid fire ones. So I should look at my timing for rapid fire.
Oh, it's fine. I can edit it, cut it
Okay.
into multiple videos.
Okay.
It's fine. You
All
have
right.
up, actually, when for TikTok I said like up to 2 minutes, but you can do like 10 minutes long videos, and I know that I've watched some 10 minutes long videos on TikTok, so
But it's only if you catch their attention, right?
yeah,
And this is the question, right?
yeah, this is the thing.
So we'll do rapid fire. I hope I have water in here. Okay, so I've got plastics. What is the big deal?
Yeah,
And I've got meat. What's the big deal?
yeah. The other ones aren't really questions, but it's just like I asked around my
Yeah,
friends to
yeah.
see the myths or the stuff that they believed or the
And
stuff
this
that they
is really
saw.
interesting. I'm really glad that you did those things because there's so many um, that I know people sort of think is must be true. And in fact, no, not at all.
Yeah. The weather climate one is a big one.
Yeah,
People confuse that all the time. I
yeah.
actually made a meme. I don't know if you know the Bernie Sanders meme. I am once again asking for your financial support, but I put, I am once again asking you to stop confusing climate and weather.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will do a little bit more research on that one because it is an absolute distinction.
Yeah.
It is an absolute distinction. Um, yeah, I think it's probably not enough to say climate is within the glass bowl. It is our atmosphere. It is the condition of our atmosphere. Weather is temporal. At this time it's this, at this time it's that, at this time it's this.
Yeah. Plus, it's still there's an association between the two because the heat waves
Yeah,
we've been having, that's
yeah,
weather, but that's also climate,
yeah.
you know?
And we actually did already pass 1.5 last year.
Yeah.
However, it has to be recorded over, I think it's a period of 5 or 10 years, but we kind of knew that we would. And it doesn't mean that we can't go back down,
Yeah,
right?
but didn't they push it like to two or something like that?
The Paris Accord, 2015 Paris Accord was limit to 1.5 as close as possible with an absolute limit of 2.
Yeah.
And at the time of the Paris Accord, we actually were on track for like 4.8. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if we ever want to do that conversation of what does the world look like at 1, at 2, at 3, at 4, at 5, at 6. Anyway, well, another story. But yeah, we were on track for like 4.8, I think. And there's an interesting mechanism of the COP conferences where I think it's every 5 years all the countries have to produce what are called the nationally determined contributions, the NDCs. And it means here's where we are now, and here's where we intend to be in 5 years, and here are the ways that we're going to do it. And so that was in 2015, they all committed to that. And then 2020 was, of course, COVID and drama, and everybody skipped it. Very few actually submitted. And then they got beaten by, the Christiana Figueres and all of like the superheroes. And they eventually submitted their NDCs. And I think then we were on track to do like 3.6 degrees, which is not good.
It's not good, but
It's
it's still better
it's better.
than what,
It's improvement, right? And that's the
yeah.
whole thing. It's improvement. And then Glasgow, which was COP26, which is 2022. That's when our champion, Mark Carney, who's now the Prime Minister of Canada, that's when he and another super awesome champion, Nigel Topping, who was the high-level climate champion, anyway, the president of COP that time, the two of them bullied all of the financial institutions and pushed them all to commit to net zero by 2050, which was a massive thing because by them committing, think about a big bank, right? BNP Paribas, for example. If they commit to net zero by 2050, that means all of where their money goes, right? So that includes, and we invest in Renault, the car company, and we invest in Carrefour. They are committing on their behalf as well. So like the knock-on network effects of all these commitments all brought it to, and now it looks like we're on track for 2.6, I think. And that's also, this is a huge COP this year. It's COP 30 in Brazil. We can do a talk about that one because everybody's being very dramatic about, the impacts that will have, and they are deforesting to build roads. It's never black and white, right? There's always the good and the bad and everything in
I
between.
mean, I know that most people my generation don't take cops seriously anymore since the last one in Azerbaijan, because it was
Well,
like literally what it's something for the climate. What are you doing over there?
yeah. So that's one way to look at it. And then it was in Dubai, right? It was in Dubai the year before, and it was in Azerbaijan last year, and it was in Egypt the year before, right? So what's interesting about the Dubai one and the Azerbaijan one, and of course everybody's like, oh, and there were even oil deals made at the event. Yes, yes. However, if you put the spotlight on those petrol states, they are suddenly under world scrutiny. And so they had to have a successful COP. And Azerbaijan was, I mean, they're never like the screaming success, right? You don't like win the COP game. But Azerbaijan was quite special because they called it the finance COP. And they've been like all nations committed to, I think it was like 100 billion a year starting 2020, which was the loss and damage fund. And that was supposed to be the rich nations who are responsible for all the emissions will pay the poor nations for the like already happening effects of climate change, rising sea levels, extreme storms, extreme floods. Like Pakistan was just knocked out with this massive flood. Same with Kenya. Like they're all over the place. I did a video once on like all of the events that have happened. And so, of course, it's not their fault. They represent almost nothing in emissions, but they're having all the effects. And so the promise was that the rich nations would pay the small nations, and nothing happened. You know, nobody paid a cent in 2020. They're like, what? What did we do? What? And then again, nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nothing's happening. Even in Glasgow, nothing's happening. And so finally, in Azerbaijan, they at least raised, did they raise 200? Did they raise, I would have to find the numbers, but it was something like 170 billion was committed globally. So yeah, it was in a petrostate, but you have to put them in the spotlight and hold their feet to the fire. Otherwise they get away with it, right?
Yeah.
And so they couldn't be, because it's supposed to be a majority agreeing to everything, but it has to be like everyone says yes. Nobody can veto. So if you are the president, if you're hosting the COP, you can't be vetoing the, no, we're not going to end coal. So yes, it was, in a petrostate, and they did deals with, yes, that's bad. But at the same time, they cannot get away anymore from the spotlight of holding back the process. And the same thing happened in Dubai. So in fact, and both Dubai and Azerbaijan, they made huge commitments, those countries, to the loss and damage fund because of, they want to be seen participating. Good.
Yeah.
Right? Good. So I know that, yes, it seems like wrong, but I think they got so much further because it was in a petrostate. They couldn't hide anymore because they have been the ones, United Arab Emirates, the petrostates have been the holdouts for many of the votes. And so if you host the events there, then they need to be showing to participate.
Yeah.
Right. So
You know, we were talking about PR earlier. I wonder because the loss of credibility of the COP with the public, it's not huge, but it's still something. I wonder if they're not like focusing on the bad thing, on saying it's in Azerbaijan, it's in Dubai, it's wrong, and no, 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 no.
yeah,
So we don't see the progress, and we're just like, well, it serves nothing. Cops are
yeah,
just useless, you know?
they serve so much. I mean, the process is not perfect. Like
Yeah, but
it
so I
should
wonder if it's not
be.
PR, you know, like putting the
Well,
spotlight on the bad thing, so we don't see the good thing, and we just completely lose hope
I
for
think
cops.
because good news is boring, right? In media, they go for the shock story and the drama and the ugliness, but good news is boring,
Yeah, but
right?
right now I think good news are more shocking than bad news. Like
Well, that's why
in
we're doing
time.
this, right?
Yeah,
That's why
exactly.
we're doing this. Yeah. I wonder if actually this is today's recording and I do more homework and get the questions ready, ready, ready. I don't know about your timing, but tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday, you pick a time because I don't need more than like 30 minutes for the research for these things. And we can be more clipped,
Yeah.
but I wonder if in this discussion,
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of things that I'm
right? We
gonna.
had a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
good,
yeah.
we had a lot of good stuff in there. So I don't think it was dog shit.
Yeah, no, I think we have like enough to do maybe three or four, like one on the cops, one
Yeah,
on the thing that you said at the beginning, then there's one on the building thing.
yeah.
Oh, we can
Yeah,
do small, yeah, we can do small cuts. I think
yeah.
there's a lot of content in here.
And who knows, you might even find that we have like the whole conversation and it's sort of part of the long form podcast that maybe gets used later, when people start to get to know, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we're doing okay.
yeah,
I think we're doing all right. And are you doing okay? I'll
yeah, I'm doing
stop.
fine.